You don't forget a sound like that. It's not a scream, not really. It's something lower, something that comes from a place so deep inside a person, you're not even sure it's meant to be heard by other human ears. It's the sound of a soul scraping against the inside of its own cage. I heard that sound come from Chris Pratt. My name is Leo Madsen. For 12 years, I was a senior sound engineer at one of the biggest post-production houses in Burbank. We handled the final mix for trailers, prestige TV, and a lot of the Marvel stuff. I've heard Robert Downey Jr. swear through a take. I've cleaned up Scarlett Johansson's breathing on a crowded set recording. I've made Chris Evans's punches sound like thunder. I know what a performance sounds like. I know the difference between an actor acting scared and the real raw terror of a human being who knows with absolute certainty that they are not alone in their own mind. What I'm about to tell you isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a confession. It's the reason I left a six-figure job and moved to the middle of nowhere, where the only sounds are the wind and the occasional goddamn cricket. I witnessed something I was never meant to see. I witnessed the moment Chris Pratt tried to escape, and I'll never ever forget what was waiting for him on the other side. My job wasn't glamorous, but it was solid. Soundstage 7, Zoetrope Post-Productions. A concrete bunker of a building that always smelled of stale coffee, new carpet, and the faint, sweet ozone of overheating electronics. My world was a dimly lit suite, walls covered in acoustic foam, a console of faders and screens that cost more than my house. My purpose was to make the unreal sound real, to make the impossible feel visceral. Chris Pratt was, well, he was Chris Pratt. In the handful of sessions we'd had together for various projects, he was exactly what you'd hope. Affable, quick to laugh, called everyone bud or man. He remembered my name after the first session, which is rarer than you'd think. He'd come in, do his work with a professional ease, crack a few jokes about the dialogue he had to say. Who talks like this, Leo? Really? And be out the door with a wave and a catch you later. Man, this particular session was for Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 3. It was late 2021. The world was still a little sideways. We were doing ADR, automated dialogue replacement. Basically re-recording lines in a studio because the on-set audio was muddy, or a plane flew overhead or whatever. Standard stuff. He came in looking a little tired, but who wasn't? He had that growing out terminal list haircut, a tight military buzz growing into something softer. He wore a simple gray hoodie and jeans. We did the usual pleasantries. He asked about my kid whose picture was on my console. I asked about his. Normal. Human. We got to work. The scene was emotional. Star-Lord, grappling with the loss of Gamora. We'd run the clip on the big screen, he'd watch his own performance, and then he'd re-deliver the lines in our soundproof booth, matching his lip movements perfectly. He was a pro. He hit the beats. The anger, the grief, the desperation. It was good. It was great, even. But then we got to one specific line. It was a simple one. Just 5 words. I just want her back. We ran it once. Good take. The director, who was patched in remotely, said, "That's the one, Chris. Perfect. Let's just get a safety. Standard practice, always get a backup." Chris nodded, took a sip of water, and got ready to go again. The clip reset. On the screen, his face was contorted in agony. The music swelled. The cue light went on. He opened his mouth, and nothing came out. He just stood there in the isolation booth, staring at his own grief-stricken image on the screen. His face went blank. Not sad, not thoughtful. Blank. Like a system rebooting. "Chris?" I said into the talkback mic. You okay, man? We lost you there. He blinked slowly and looked toward me through the double-paned glass. His smile returned, but it was delayed, like a buffer catching up. Sorry, guys. Zoned out for a sec, let's go again. The clip reset, the cue light. He took a breath. I just want her back. The line was identical to the first take. The inflection, the tremor in his voice, the exact millisecond of pause between want and her. It was a perfect copy, a carbon copy. Most people would have called it a marvel of consistency. Asterisk. For me, in my chair, listening through $5,000 headphones, it set off every alarm bell I had. Human beings aren't digital. There are always tiny infinitesimal variations. A breath that's a hair shallower, a word that's pitched a fraction of a hertz higher. This wasn't a performance. It was a playback. The remote director's voice crackled in my ear. Okay, that was identical. Let's try one more, Chris. Maybe give me a little more on back. A little more ache. You got it, Chris said, his voice chipper through the studio monitors. Third take. The clip played. The cue light. He opened his mouth. And it happened again. The blankness. The system reboot. His jaw hung slightly open, his eyes utterly vacant, fixed on the screen. This time it lasted a good 3 seconds. Then he spoke. But it was wrong. The line was the same. I just want her back. But the voice, it was flat, toneless, robotic. It had none of the emotion, none of the Star-Lord personality. It was just words, emitted. And underneath it, my gear picked up something else. A low-frequency hum, so deep it was almost a vibration more than a sound. I saw the needles on my VU meters twitch, registering a subharmonic that shouldn't have been there. Whoa, okay. The director laughed nervously. That was a choice. Let's go back to the first take's energy, yeah? Chris didn't acknowledge him. He was still staring at the screen, now frozen on his own face. He wasn't moving. Chris, I said into the talkback. He turned his head toward me. The movement wasn't smooth, it was jerky, mechanical. His eyes were wide, but they weren't seeing me. They were looking through me. I need a minute, he said. His voice was raspy, dry. Sure, man. Of course. I killed the talkback and turned to my assistant, a young kid named Ben. Go get him a water, will you? Ben nodded and scurried out. I was alone in the control room, watching Chris Pratt through the glass. He had his hands braced on the music stand that held his script. His head was bowed. I could see the muscles in his forearms corded, tight. He was trembling. Then he began to whisper. My finger hovered over the talkback button, but I didn't press it. Instead, I slowly, silently, pushed the fader for his booth microphone up. I shouldn't have. It was a violation of privacy. But the professional curiosity, the sheer weirdness of it overrode my ethics. The whisper was low, frantic, a desperate mantra. I'm here. I'm still here. This is me, Christopher. I'm in here. I'm in the house. The house is not me. The house is not me. The house. The phrase was chilling. It wasn't industry Jew. It wasn't anything. Ben came back in with the water. I quickly pulled the fader down. He's just taking a second, I said, trying to sound normal. Chris took the water when Ben entered the booth, drank deeply, and thanked him. The smile was back, the easygoing vibe. All right, let's knock this out, he said. Sorry about that, team. Long week. We did 2 more takes. They were fine. Great even. He nailed the director's note. The session ended. He waved. Thanks, Leo. Later, Ben. He walked out. The door hissed shut behind him. I sat in my chair, my skin crawling. I played back the recording of his whisper. I'm in the house. The house is not me. I deleted it. Then I emptied the trash. Some instincts are primal. You know when you've heard something you weren't meant to hear. I thought that was the end of it. A weird one-off moment of stress. Celebrity life is intense. Maybe he was method acting or something. I was wrong. The next time was for a commercial. A voiceover for a truck company. Simple stuff. Rugged, dependable, real. He came in, all smiles again. But I saw it now, the slight delay behind the eyes. The microsecond it took for the smile to reach them. We were in the middle of a take when my main monitor flickered and died. Ah, damn it, I muttered. Hang on, Chris. I tapped the screen. Nothing. Then from the speakers, through Chris's open mic in the booth, a voice came out. But it wasn't his dot. It was a flat, synthesized voice devoid of all emotion. It spoke 3 words, clear as day. Unit is stable. Chris's face in the booth went pale. He looked directly at me, and for the first time I saw real, unvarnished terror in his eyes. It was there for a split second, a silent plea before the pleasant blank mask slid back into place. The monitor flickered back on. What was that? Chris asked, his voice perfectly normal. Sounded like a robot. I just stared. He was acting. He was acting now. And he was brilliant at it. He had to be. The final session was the one that broke me. It was months later. The Guardians mix was locked, but they needed one last line for a trailer. A pickup. Just one line. Chris was coming in alone, no director, just me and him. It was supposed to take 10 minutes. He arrived looking hollow. The charm was a thin veneer. He moved carefully, as if his body were a suit he wasn't entirely comfortable wearing. We exchanged minimal pleasantries. He just wanted to get it done. The line was, "It's time to go home." Simple. We set up. He stood in the booth. The clip played on the screen, a sweeping shot of nowhere. Cue light. He took a breath. It's time to go home. Good. A little flat, but serviceable. Great, let's get one more, I said. The clip reset. Cue light. He opened his mouth and his body locked up. His spine went rigid. His eyes rolled back into his head, showing the whites. A low, guttural static emanated from his throat, distorting my speakers. Asterisk. The lights in the control room flickered. The spectral analyzer on my screen went haywire, spiking with chaotic, non-audible frequencies. Then, his eyes snapped forward. They were looking at me, but they weren't his eyes. The color seemed wrong. The consciousness behind them was ancient and cold. The voice that came out was a layered horror. Underneath his own vocal cords, something else spoke. Something that used his voice like a poorly tuned radio. The exit is sealed. I recoiled from my console. I was frozen in my chair. Inside the booth, Chris began to convulse. It was a violent internal struggle. He grabbed his own head with both hands, his fingers digging into his temples like he was trying to pry his own skull open. He slammed himself against the soundproofed wall of the booth. Thump, thump, thump. A raw, ragged scream tore out of him. It was that sound. The one I told you about. The soul scraping at its cage. "Get out!" he screamed. His voice cracking with a pain so profound, it felt like a physical object in the room. "Get me out of the house!" He was clawing at his own face now, drawing red lines down his cheeks. He was fighting. He was trying to escape his own body. This wasn't a seizure. This was an exorcism. The door to my control room burst open. Two men I'd never seen before, dressed in dark, impeccably tailored suits, moved with a chilling efficiency. They didn't look at me. They went straight to the booth door. One of them placed a small metallic device against the electronic lock. It beeped, and the door unsealed with a hiss. The other entered. Chris, or the thing wearing him, was writhing on the floor. The man who entered didn't try to restrain him. He simply knelt down, placed a hand on Chris's forehead, and spoke, 2 words in a low, calm monotone, "Stand down." And just like that, it stopped. The tension vanished from Chris's body. The screaming ceased. The man helped him to his feet. Chris smoothed down his hoodie. He looked perfectly fine, unruffled. He saw the scratches on his face in the reflection of the glass and frowned slightly, as if noticing a minor inconvenience. The second suit finally turned to me. He had a face that was impossible to remember the second you looked away. Mr. Madsen. What is he okay? I stammered. Mr. Pratt experienced a transient ischemic attack, a minor stroke. He has a known condition. It's under control, the man said. His voice was flat, devoid of inflection. It was the voice I'd heard through the speakers. Unit is stable. That wasn't a stroke, I whispered. The man's eyes locked onto mine. There was nothing in them. No threat, no anger, no emotion, just a void. And that was more terrifying than any threat could ever be. The session is over, he stated. The project files. Now. I was too terrified to disobey. I pulled up the session. He produced a thumb drive. I watched as he dragged every single audio file from the last hour into it. He then went into the system's root directory and purged the cache, the autosaves, the backup drives that were synced to our server. He knew our system better than I did. Your non-disclosure agreement with Marvel Studios is legally binding for eternity, the man said, not looking at me. What you witnessed today was a medical emergency. You will speak of it to no one. It would be unhealthy. Chris walked out of the booth, flanked by the first suit. He paused at the door and looked back at me. For a fleeting moment, the mask slipped again. There was no plea this time. Just a bottomless, abyssal sadness. A look of a man watching the world from a very, very deep window. Then he was gone. I sat in the silent studio for an hour, maybe 2. I couldn't move. The smell of his sweat, the ozone from the flickering lights, the coppery tang of fear. My fear still hung in the air. I quit the next day. I gave no notice. I told my wife we were moving. I told her I'd had a nervous breakdown. It was easier than the truth. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The house. He wasn't talking about a home. He was talking about his body. His own flesh was the prison. That thing, that cold synthetic consciousness. It was the tenant. And he was trapped in the basement. I started looking into things I shouldn't. The known condition the suit mentioned. I found nothing, but I found other things. Old forums, buried Reddit threads from years ago from crew members on Parks and Rec mentioning episodes, how he'd sometimes glitch and need a minute to reset. I read about his rapid rise to fame, his transformation from the schlubby Andy Dwyer to the chiseled Star-Lord. It was chalked up to Hollywood training, but the timeline was aggressive. Unnaturally so. I thought about his public persona, the relentless positivity, the almost robotic consistency of his charm. Was it a performance, or was it a program running ensuring the unit remained stable and marketable? And the final chilling piece, the real event, his very public spiritual journey, his talk of Jesus and rebirth. Everyone saw it as a celebrity finding religion. But what if it was something else? What if it was a cry for help? A desperate attempt to use the language of exorcism and salvation to signal what was happening to him. To find someone who could get him out of the house, I don't sleep much. When I do, I dream of that sound, that scraping, screaming sound. I see his face, not the one on the movie posters, but the raw, terrified face of a man who is a passenger in his own life. I'm telling you this now because I saw a trailer the other day for a new movie. He was there, smiling that perfect smile. He cracked a joke. The audience laughed. But I wasn't watching Chris Pratt. I was watching the house. And I knew, with a cold certainty, that the real Chris Pratt is still in there, screaming. And his handlers are always nearby with their blank faces and their calming words, making sure the door stays sealed. So the next time you see him on screen in a magazine doing his goofy, charming routine, look closer, listen harder, past the performance, past the programming dot, listen for the whisper under the words, listen for the hum of something that isn't human, listen for the sound of a man trying to escape.